I'm Jamie Chadwick, reporting from Expana, bringing you the latest updates on the Middle East conflict and what it could mean for global food and agriculture. Geopolitical escalation around Iran has dramatically increased risk to oil markets as shipping through the Strait of Hormuz slows to a crawl, pushing prices up and unsettling global markets in a big way. While the U.S. administration is deploying a mix of military assurances, financial risk backing measures, and public messaging to secure flows, it undoubtedly faces limits on what it can effectively guarantee. President Donald Trump has publicly stated that the U.S. Navy would escort oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz if necessary to ensure the free flow of energy. These escorts are intended to deter attacks and give confidence to commercial shipping, but implementation depends on military logistics and regional threat assessments. The U.S. has also directed the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation to provide political risk insurance and financial guarantees for maritime trade in the Gulf, aiming to underwrite some of the commercial risks that private insurers have abandoned. Additionally, the Treasury officials have stressed that despite disruption, global oil markets remain well supplied in the short term due to large flows from other regions and inventories. However, President Trump has acknowledged that the conflict is likely to raise oil prices for U.S. consumers in the near term, even as his administration discusses strategic solutions. Ongoing diplomatic communication continues with energy importers such as Japan, which reports having robust oil reserves, and other strategic partners to gauge exposure and coordinate potential mitigations. Even with these measures, several factors continue to threaten the stability of oil flows, one being the effectiveness of U.S. naval escorts. While escorts may deter some threats, they cannot guarantee full protection against missile or drone attacks in a high conflict environment. Additionally, a sustained naval escort operation would require substantial forces and could further escalate tensions with Iranian forces. Additionally, if military protection is offered, commercial shippers may still refuse to transit due to things like skyrocketing insurance and charter rates, the cost of risk premiums added to oil prices, and hesitation by shipping firms in general to operate in declared high-risk zones. Iran's IRGC has declared control over the Strait of Hormuz, signaling a willingness to assert authority and dissuade passage, complicating U.S. and allied efforts. As with most commodity markets, oil markets are highly responsive to perceptions of risk. Even limited disruptions can cause outsized price moves. Analysts warn that a prolonged reduction of flows for even a few weeks could draw down inventories quickly and push crude prices higher. The disruption also affects downstream products as well as agricultural bulk products, potentially restraining economic growth and complicating global inflation dynamics. While some pipeline capacities and spare OPEC production exist, the concern is that these alternatives won't fully substitute for the volume typically shipped through Hormuz. So once again, we face the unknown variable of duration that will ultimately determine the degree of severity for global stakeholders. Asia sources 60% of its oil from the Middle East, leaving the region particularly vulnerable to the disruptions. Refiners in Indonesia and Japan are sourcing more oil from the U.S. to replace the shortfall, while India has said it will consider buying more from Russia. As of Wednesday, March 4th, oil and natural gas prices were seeing a modest rise, though the pace of price increases for oil and natural gas on global markets has slowed compared to the sharp spikes that we saw on Monday and Tuesday. Subscribe to Expana for continued updates on the Middle East conflict and related impacts on the food and agriculture sector. Visit expanamarkets.com to learn how you can gain access.